advantage it doesn't have.
Well, and actually, I think that it is sort of both sides of that coin, right? Like, how do we actually launch this so that student badging continues to have a huge impact, right? So, if we're looking at the ways in which adult badges become an entry point for folks, oh, I see this is valuable for me, so then it becomes valuable for kids. And so, I think that it is, you know, in many schools that student badging has really taken hold. It's like, oh, that greases the skids and makes it a little bit easier for adult badging to take hold in those schools. But for some, and I think secondary in particular, if they don't see the direct benefit for themselves as adult learners or as folks who it's like, all right, so if I have currency in this and I can exchange it or it has some value to me, then my students should have that access as well. And so it becomes a little bit more integral. But yeah, like I do think there is a skepticism around things that are new. And I guess that would be the frame that I would have. But since you were there, you might have felt more than skepticism.
Cynical suspicion.
Cynical suspicion.
But
But there are ways of sort of making it right. Like not everybody needs the same exact way of presenting it. Like they might need a different frame or a different entry point. And I think that that's something that we will end up talking about a little bit today, but probably more in future sessions too. Because we had to move it from Thursday based upon the school leader day, we're a little low in numbers. I'm okay with that. We've got some key people here. We can have the conversation. But I'm going to say we're not going to do it on Monday anymore. To make it easier for folks who are out at schools and things like that. So I'll make sure that isn't an issue. If you haven't already, go to the BPL site under competencies and adult badges. That's where we're going to be playing today. And so if you are there, there's a special link that we're going to be using that I'm really excited about. Because we are going to talk about our evidence. Now, I gave everybody a little bit of homework, although it may be slightly less relevant for some folks. But essentially, we're going to focus all of our time today talking about evidence for adult badges. Okay, we did some initial work around essentially the different types. And these are super high level. So student work, projects, assessment data, student surveys or interviews. This is student data. These are teacher artifacts, teacher reflection, lesson plan or lesson artifact, mind map. These are very, very high level evidence for badges. So if you are under...
You scroll down or up. You're on
Is it there?
Yep.
Maybe? Okay. Sorry if I went either too fast or just didn't connect the dots there. So under competencies, adult badges. There it is. And if you scroll down, evidence for badges. So there is a frame here that I want to discuss. Here, go back up. Get one more. There. Okay. Right there. So if you click on what it says for evidence for badges, do you see that? It's like a link. You can click on it. It'll open up into a Google Drawing. There are two different types of evidence that we can support with our adult badges. There is evidence of professional learning, meaning that the adult learner understands that they learned something new, they have some way of recognizing that they grew as an adult learner on this particular topic. My best sort of example of that is a reflection. We often ask adult learners to reflect on what they have done in this class, course, or whatever it is. That is their evidence of professional learning. I learned the thing, I reflected on it. This is how I think it's going to impact my classroom or my practice. Right? That's not totally out of left field. That's something we would do. Right? Evidence of student impact is the other type of evidence that we might look at. So a good example of that would be student outcome data, maybe, right? So we see that the scores for writing increased by X amount in the course of this school year. within this teacher, right? That is an evidence of student impact. Somewhere in the center there is both of those things, right? And an example that I would see there is some action research that a teacher was doing as a part of their professional learning. I implemented this strategy and the reflection and, hey, we are not ready for that.
Oh, I was capturing what you were saying.
It's a collaborative document. You gotta know the protocol. All right, so in the middle there is that idea that you're combining those two things, right? You're combining those two things and you're thinking about what would evidence be that is both evidence of professional learning, evidence of student impact, okay? What we are going to do is participate in a visual, not words, which is why I slapped your hand, sorry. A visual Venn diagram. In order to do that, what we are going to do is if you click on the Insert button up at the top and click on Image, you can do a search. So all the way to the right, you can do a search, and you are going to try and find a visual representation of whatever the type of evidence is for what you would ask of a teacher that is in one of those three areas. And it's okay if it's not in the center, because we want to capture evidence of professional learning. We want to capture evidence of student impact, but you want to do an image. So I'm just gonna put data in and search. So when I put in data, I'm gonna get this really big image. I'm gonna select it, and I saw that you just put something in there.
No.
We're all doing it at the same time. It's totally okay, but you will note that it's super big. I am yelling at her. It is super big, so you will want to make it much, much smaller, okay? Put it where you think it should go, right? You may have to move somebody else's out of the way in order to make it happen. And the way in which you're gonna add text to it is by making a comment on it. So you're gonna add your comment in there and say student data, particularly, I'm gonna go with interim data, could show student impact. The reason why we're going to do it this way is because it gives us a little bit more of a visual, but it also lets us have a conversation about each one as a part of a thread, okay? So what I want us to do is to brainstorm as many as we possibly can. We can do it out loud. We can do it just by typing in our little boxes. But please do come up with a few different ideas for what that looks like. Evidence of professional learning and evidence of student impact. Okay? Does that work?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Ooh, that one. I just have to feel it. Is it my vibration or is it your vibration?
You're worried about my lucky elbow again?
Right?
Problematic?
Yes. They're all problematic, okay? They're all problematic.
Did you put a football field?
I did.
Oh,
I was going for an audience, you know, like crowd. Can I edit?
Can we comment on each other's yet?
Yes. Thank you for asking about process. I appreciate it.
Oh, You man.
You a man. Sorry. Ho! Get that out of there. Think about what you would ask of a teacher or leader that they would show evidence of some kind.
Sorry.
You're good.
Move somebody's picture.
Collaboration is messy sometimes. if you haven't started commenting on other folks, please do that. It's a good idea. All right, finish the last thought. Oh, somebody just added one more. Is it you? Okay. So let's start and look at sort of each one of these and talk it through a little bit. So Noah, you said public reflection and processing. What are you thinking there that sort of would be most valuable as evidence of professional learning?
Content-wise, you mean?
Yeah.
You know, if it's in my mind, I was approaching this very much from a how do you synthesize this with something that someone's already doing. And so, if someone is somebody who says, Gwen Moore keeps a blog and wants to, in her blog, do a post reflecting on, hey, I went to this conference. This is what I learned. Here's how I'm implementing my class. Then might we be able to take that piece of that artifact of that blog post that she's already doing anyways and say that counts. You don't have to jump through an extra hoop. And so that was sort of the lens I was taking there.
Yeah, I like that idea of essentially evidence that is already being captured, right, through the normal process of professional learning, right?
Mm-hmm. Are there opportunities to eliminate redundancies by pulling in stuff people are already doing? Or, hey, yeah, just point.
Right.
Like it's parked over there. Be like, oh, great.
Right. And literally, if we submit the URL to that thing, right, then it becomes a part of the evidence that is very easy to manage in that way. Yep. I like that a lot. Okay. Bev, the transcript representing the completion, in quotation marks, of PL. What are you thinking there?
Just that has been a standard way of representing learning.
Yeah,
And will probably persist in some fashion.
And so
mine's like yours.
because you have the certificate there as well,
mine's like
right?
you get those certificates when you finish a session, right? And it's like you put in this many hours, and then you get a bunch of them. And you got a transcript, right? It's like that's our traditional way.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like that is? I would agree with you absolutely that it will persist in some way, shape, or form, right? Like transcripts do end up mattering to institutions, to folks who are looking at further opportunities. In terms of evidence of the actual learning that happened, do you feel like there is a way in which they could be made maybe more rich, or that would allow for them to speak to like what happened in those classes or what happened as a result? Do you see what I'm asking?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, if you get over, and if we're talking about teachers and professional learning, probably any of those things over in the right-hand circle would be more evidence of professional learning. Sometimes it's a product that students
Mm-hmm.
complete, or which was well noted over there. So
Yeah, I'm just thinking like, because ours are similar. It's like that's a traditional way of showing that you did professional learning, right? But did you really learn something? Like, are you applying it? Like, I think that's the deficit this model is beginning to address, is that traditional evidence of professional learning, albeit super weak and probably having gaps, is like seat time.
well, and I even see a difference between maybe a transcript and the certificate, because the certificate is usually only like number of hours. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like to me the
Mhm.
lowest form
Yeah.
of completion, if you will. A transcript at least has a grade or some sort of notation about how well you did, at least while you were there. Whether or not it
Yeah.
transferred beyond, there's I'm sure questions.
So like a college transcript, is that?
Mhm.
Oh, okay, because that was about.
Or even a high school. I mean, really from anywhere.
Yeah, I
It
was
says,
gonna-
you Tanya took it and got an A, and I took it and got a B. There's probably some difference.
And that to me is maybe key, right?
Yeah.
Like that there is some relative metric that we would be able to say for coursework or evidence or
Mhm.
something that there is some value. I'm going back to our EdCamp experience over the weekend, right? You could receive your hours to send into CDE for EdCamp, the unconference, but that's not why most people were there, and that's definitely not the evidence of what was happening necessarily in the collaborations that were started or the conversation you had with the teacher from North, like. And so, is there a way in which the certificate at the end of the day or the transcript over across might better represent the learning that actually happens there, so that could be used as a part of evidence? What were you going to say? And it could be on that topic or going in another direction.
I think that you make a really good point that for all the exciting new innovative stuff, if somebody's going to Regis at night and getting a master's degree or any institution, right, that should be something that gets noticed, named, and recognized by the school district. And I wonder, is the transcript the place to go? Like I think, and even the grader, would you be more like a paper they wrote? Like when we think about what the evidence is, they're there, and maybe the transcript is a piece of it. But like a teacher, like I in grad school got a B in a class because on one paper I used the old MLA citation method, not the new one,
Yeah.
because I saved $60 on the book. And she knocked me down 2 letter grades for that. And so that was a case where, my, grade was not really representative. And so maybe I'm just trigger warning, sensitive to that. But I think that my paper itself would have been evidence that, I got the learning.
But what about like through CDE, right? Like I did my relicensure recently, and like I have a printout of my professional development from Saba, or what at that time Avatar, and then but there's like no grades on it. It's just basically like you did this class, you did this thing, and here's this time, and like the state just wants me to show them time, and then I get my relicensure. So it's like yeah. I guess that's current state, right? That's.
So one of the things that we used to do at the medical education company that I worked for was to include the competencies on the certificates. So if you know what competencies are being taught at the course, and then include them on the certificate. So if they are included on the certificate, then you can count them as evidence. And if they're not, then maybe that's not.
Yeah. And I like that idea. Tell me again what the exact sort of thing that was connected to it.
Medical device.
Okay.
So we were actually, doctors were coming and we were teaching them how to use devices. But even down to, we had a hand washing class for, CNAs and nurses. So
Yep.
right down to that, and they have to take a test and at the end, and then but the competencies that they learn in that class when they got the certificate were listed on
So
each individual certificate.
yeah, and I like that idea of like if we were saying that this PD is associated with these competencies, that they could be listed as a part of a transcript or as a part of even a certificate. If we right, like it doesn't have to be wholesale change over to everything is then badged, but then you're still creating alignment
Right.
with the work that is already being done that might not be ready to badge, and that kind of thing. So Sean, just to catch you up. We are looking at evidence for professional learning and evidence of student impact, and there is some crossover there, and sort of just talking about the different things that we've brainstormed thus far. Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay, right, sure. Yeah, no worries.
Scolded, Ben. Scolded.
Well, I scolded you. You're fine.
Kevin wants everybody to share
I
it.
know. Share
Noah, you said this.
You went Pledge Brothers and you're
Yeah.
in the rush.
Thank you for that.
All right. So Noah, you said citing the source of professional learning and combining it with a narrative implementation impact somehow there. So
That sounded so much more concrete in my head when I put it down there.
so thinking about like, all right, where did this PD experience take place? And you're doing some level of either reflection or writing about what it meant, right? Is that kind of where you're thinking about it?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
So again going back to if I read Teach Like a Pirate or I read Teach Like a Champion and I took these two things and used them in my classroom, what's the least burdensome thing on a teacher, to where they want to get credentialed for doing that. And so yeah, being able to just point and say, here's the book, and here's what I did as a result.
Mm-hmm. So almost in there, it's that the teacher kind of says, this is the evidence that I am putting forward to say that I read the book and that it actually is going to matter.
Yeah, and I think that the teacher putting forward is like the key thing there, that it's not, well, I read that book, and here's the multiple choice test that you're now going to have to take in order to prove to me that you also read that book.
Right. It's not necessarily a book report, but
Yeah.
some of that aspect of it. All right, crosswalk to competencies. What do you mean by that?
I just added that,
Yeah.
really going off of what Tanya was saying there, that, something to just be able to say, whether it's, the competency work that you're doing, and to say, here's something I did that was new, and I did it because I'm digging into this competency that we've named.
I like that a lot.
3B. Yeah.
And so at that point, it's almost like tagging PD with those competencies, and you'd be able to see that. And from that, you could also look at it in the way of like, where are our gaps too, right? So the ability for us to see, oh, these are the competencies that we're not currently teaching or in PD, or that are not being actively sought by teachers. Yeah, I like that a lot. All right, what's the Hangout one down at the bottom there? Providing a recording of conversation with colleagues that debriefs the professional learning.
Yeah. Again, I gotta get together and have a Google Hangout or type of thing, right? In a conversation and something that I would have been doing anyway, maybe.
Yep.
Maybe we'll provide that. With the caveat being that conversation could be on a couch in the hallway at a conference with people who aren't in my school district.
Yeah, I like that a lot. All right. Gretchen, thank you so much.
Sorry, I got hung up at a school. And this ended up back to back.
You really do not have to apologize for being at a school. That is not. Please don't do that. We are essentially just talking about the different types of evidence that we might talk through as a part of a badge. So if you want to get to where we are, is that link right there? Evidence for badges. And that's where we are. So if you click on one of the pictures, we're just discussing the comments that everybody left on the pictures that they used. This is a visual Venn diagram, if you will. Are you moving things around?
Unless I can control it with my mind. I know who it is though. I'm watching the. I'm watching the.
Like, why isn't it moving?
I'm looking at it. I'm like, she's hitting the down arrow and the thing's going down.
I love that.
Putting it back.
That's true.
So you asked a really great question on the one that I put in there, like student data. How do we attribute student data or changes in student data to professional learning rather than to other factors? I mean, can we do that?
Yeah, yeah. Nobody gave me the answer.
That's fair.
I think it would have to be like change, something changed. That's what I put in the middle one actually. But like some change happened, like a teacher made a change in their practice, and then there was a change in like something around the student experience, data. I think it's got to be
You have to
compared
actually
to something.
document that though.
Something has to.
You wouldn't. I mean, you can't just say North scores went up 3%, so
Right.
therefore these teachers are because
Well, and
North scores
Because they
went
did those
up
PED?
3% because they
They all did their
their
PD.
student population changed.
Yeah.
well, and I
So-
think the thing is, in schools, it's rare to only have one effort at a
Fair.
time. One, so it's not like you have to perfect. It's rare to
I-
have less than
Initiative overload.
27. But it's like, okay, yeah, you might have had this professional learning. Why you did this? Why you did this? Why you did this? Why you did that? It's just hard to sort it
Yeah.
all out.
Yep.
And so it's,
Well, and I
it's hard to. You can't have causation exactly.
and that's exactly right. I mean, the idea is that you would absolutely be able to say these two things are correlated, right? Like that we had an increase, we did this PD, right? Like those things happened at the same time,
That's
right?
What you can do.
but not
Yeah.
necessarily that one caused the other. I do think if you were able to do a specific, research or action research component and you were able to show that like these strategies specifically kept showing up in multiple classrooms, I think you could get there, but that's like a much bigger lift,
Mhm.
right? And so I think that that's why that is only on evidence of student impact, right? Like student outcomes were impacted by something, right? It might be that the student population changed and that was the impact, or it might be something else. And so that's why I think that part of it is probably there. And then when we get to the one in the middle, that's where if you can talk to causation, then you've got really something that's pretty incredible. All right, actively and cognitively engaged student sharing work. Say more.
So, yeah, where you were going with your question, like I was thinking would slide that into the middle. So I was imagining that if it's only evidence of student impact, let's imagine that student in that picture, like hated life in the classroom and just was underperforming. And now this student is like liking the experience and they're also thinking at a higher level and they're able to show that higher level thinking because they're now sharing something tangible like their work. So I thought that could be, there's a student impact because there's a change in like behavior, there's a change in how they work. I guess I didn't say that in there, but that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, and I think that goes along with sort of the one that I put in there, like project outcomes, like to see us using many ways of visually capturing the products that come from a student-focused, project-based learning experience, right? So if you have the ability, and you were talking about video, right? Like this is sort of visual evidence of learning, and I think that it gets a lot at the sort of make learning visible, which also connects to cultures of thinking work and things like that, where if students are able to make their thinking visible and their sort of learning visible, then it becomes, oh yeah, we did have an impact. If you are able to sort of say, and that was the strategy that I was using based upon professional learning, you might be able to move that a little bit closer to the center there. But I think that if we can make those visual connections and students are doing that, just like we are asking of our teachers over here, then I think we do get closer to the middle. All right, pre and post assessments. What are you thinking there, Noah?
Yeah, just that if I was gonna say, hey, I'm gonna red TTI champion, I'm gonna try this out with my kids, and here's two different classes or more action research. Like, here's two different classes. This one I tried it this way I did it the way I did it last year. Here's the pre-assessment for both groups. Here's the post-assessment. So there's evidence of student impact. I do think, well, I guess we'll get to it, but I think what you raised is an important thing of like, does evidence of student impact have to show growth on the student side for it to be professional learning on the teacher side? That maybe what I did was learned a really important lesson about what not to do. Is that still something that we want to be recognizing?
What's a student impact?
There's a student.
Yeah.
And it's kind of positive because the teacher now knows what not to do.
Right.
Reflection.
So.
Huge for teachers and self-reflection.
Yeah, I think as long as it doesn't lead to either the teacher leaving the profession, as in like I learned this is not what I want to do with my life, or like that there is some change in practice
Which
as a
would be
result.
evidence of professional learning.
Right. Totally fair. All right, I'm going to go to the ones in the middle here. All right, the student crowd feedback survey reflection on impact. So it's asking the students to reflect on what the teacher was doing. Is that what you're thinking, Noah?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And I like it, and it could be a parent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it could be something that a parent says during parent-teacher conference. Like, oh wow, my kid is paying so much more attention in school, and like, I really think that they know what's going on because of this thing you're doing with student planners. And I'm like, oh, I went to a session on student planners.
Connect those two.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Could it be
I
like
like
if I was planning a lesson and I was really focusing on like cultural identity and I wove that into the experience for the students, and then after we got done with it, I might survey them and ask them some questions about how were you able to like identify with this lesson, but through your own experiences, like just ask like cultural identity, like stuff like that.
Totally.
Like,
I didn't do well my student perception survey last year, so I read this book about empathy over the summer, and now I'm going to use my student perception survey data to see if, show that I learned something from the book and put it into practice.
I like that a lot.
I
And I think
just
that,
don't understand why you use that picture though.
I was
Because it's a
thinking
crowd.
about like the crowd, right? That the teacher's the performer.
they are
We're
giving
getting
feedback,
feedback.
right?
We're
The
getting
crowd
feedback.
is
So
giving
it's either
feedback.
like,
Good job.
I was going
Terrible
for the
job.
crowd. Yeah, that's yeah. That's what I was going for.
No,
call
that
it
totally works for me
Gotcha.
as a visual. All right,
I'm
teacher
trying to make
professional.
meaning.
Make meaning for yourself, Kevin.
I got it.
Teacher professional growth plan and student data.
Okay.
So like marrying those
Yeah,
two.
yeah. So this is where, like, when you're asking me about the kid with the smile on his face, this is where I would marry the two. So, like, if I know my gap as a professional, and you've been using lots of good examples like reading books or like attending PD, like, I know my gap as a professional is this thing, and so I'm going to take on professional learning centered on that, and I'm going to apply it, and I'm going to look at changing, like, student data and, like, their perception or whatever it might be, but laying it side by side, not
Yes.
doing it in isolation.
Yes. Absolutely. And I think right now they are kind of isolated from one another in that, I mean, except in the case where, you have the time set aside to, I'm going to look at the student data and reflect upon it and make the next version of the professional plan.
Yeah, and I wonder, like, does it have to be, well, it wouldn't only happen necessarily in a professional plan. It would also be moves you're making as a teacher on a day-to-day basis. I know, like, for me, I did something with my students and it, like, totally didn't work out and they gave me feedback on it. So I, like, changed my practice right away around that. And it wasn't necessarily part of my growth plan, but I think that's where I was going with the other picture I put next to it.
The screenshot or link to an online forum showing teacher application and student interaction.
Yeah, like student interaction between each other, but also maybe with the teacher. Like you learn to do something, so then you are capturing some sort of artifact of that and being able to share it.
And it also makes me think of sort of the capture of student and teacher conversation or student and teacher interaction that would show further like, oh, the student is hearing what is being said and responding to it. The teacher is responding to the need of the student.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of see both of those things at the same
Yeah, if
time.
you're doing like a PD on like meaningful feedback to your students, and I'll go total tech geek now. Like use a Google Doc, and you're giving feedback in the comments of it, and then you can actually see the student changing like their written piece because they were listening to the feedback you're giving them through the revision history. Somehow capturing that and being able to share it. It's like I did PD on meaningful feedback. Look at how affected like my student as far as their writing process from beginning to end.
Yeah, I mean, that could be as simple as capturing the draft back, sort of like seeing the changes as they are happening when you're sort of playing it back.
Yeah, beginning and end or something, compare like.
I like that a lot. You brought about the use of video. We talked a little bit about sort of, all right, so you're capturing what's happening in the classroom, and then you're also reflecting on what's happening in the classroom. Both could be used for sort of, this is what the impact was, this is what I thought the impact would be. Are there anything, other things that you would add to that?
And it could capture either teacher or student behaviors or products.
Yes.
That's where like that 360 camera would be sweet because you could like choose to watch it a couple times. Once like watching yourself and twice watching like what the students are doing, right? Because you can rotate it around.
Do you picture like testimonials could even be part of that video? Like,
Sure.
reality
I hadn't thought of
testimonial
the,
stuff?
depending on the content, I mean,
Say more
It could
about
be-
like
it could be-
testimonial.
Like whether it's me just sitting here like this, or you know, hey Lupe, like can you real quick like just tell my camera what what we did on this and how it was different than
Oh, so student testimonials
Either or.
perchance. That's really interesting. Because even the videos that were captured of the kids who did the math pilot, there were a couple of 8th grade boys, I think, that you interviewed, and you said, what was different about this? Or John did, maybe. And I was watching them, and they were like able to at least articulate, this felt different because... I think that would be very interesting to see as a part of the evidence. Absolutely. All right, the last one I put in here was sort of the idea of like things that we are trying, right, as a result of PD, right, but an actual dashboard of like, this is the things that I want to do, this is what I'm doing, this is what I've already done, and what worked and what didn't. That's sort of like a more project management side of evidence, but like there are lots of teachers I know who are writing feverishly down in notebooks during PD, like these are the things that I'm going to try tomorrow, these are the things for later, you know, and then they go back and sort of see what worked and what didn't. But it's very much like not being captured as evidence necessarily.
Do you picture it could be even like a template, kind of a graphic organizer
Yep.
template that's for some teachers, they're going to look at that and say, that right there is going to be actually an easy way to
Yep.
communicate this.
So that's what I was thinking. And you said it raises an important point that professional learning can be recognized even when the learning is more around lessons learned or what not to do. And I think that gets back to what you were talking about, like, hey, we learned not to yell at children the other day. No, I know I didn't.
Children.
Yeah, it's a different thing.
Two heads.
Okay. So we have a good set, and I think there are probably more types of evidence, and I'm going to reach out after this and sort of share the work that we've done already. There are more types of evidence. Which of these types of evidence would we want to say to actually put a lot of effort, like you said, in sort of creating a template around or providing support for teachers in capturing this type of evidence. And I'm okay with it being on some on the left, some on the right, some in the middle. But what do you think would be highest leverage and maybe most important for us to dedicate some time to as we are building out, well, this is the evidence that we would ask for teachers to provide as a part of our badge?
I definitely think there should be something associated to like the student experience, because ultimately they're the user. Like you're getting professionally developed to be better at your craft in service to the student. So I would expect there to be something like in the middle that we had there, you know, like this is my new learning I took on, and here is. So you can watch a video of me doing like unpacking the standards or whatever, but even more importantly than that, there's got to be the student component of like, how did it impact them? How do you see that evidence of impact on them, both through the data, you know, eventually, also probably like interviewing them or just like observing a lesson, focusing through their experience and not necessarily only the teacher moves that are happening. So it's got to be, in my mind, connected to student.
Very interesting. Other thoughts?
I also think that not to belittle the changes that the teacher is making, because sometimes the student indicators are a lagging indicator. So the teacher first starts making changes and the kids are like, what the heck is this? We're not participating in this, and it takes some time and some perseverance for the teacher to have that result in a change.
It's a good point too.
And so I think you need both.
I'd say too, especially if you've had these kids, all of a sudden you're trying to implement, for example, cultural thinking. If they haven't been in a class for the last 8 years of their education in that kind of setting. You know, and the other thing, thinking about the evidence of professional learning too, there is kind of that what is expected from the teacher in the way of demonstration or changes in their practice that can be observed and supported by other people in the building or evaluators.
Say that
Yes.
again. That sounded actually really important.
Well, I think, I'm thinking back to our earlier conversation, and, you know, Sean, you've picked it up really quickly. I mean, part of, I think, our challenge here is we don't have coherent expectations or vision around what we want, period. And then we end up with, we do this, and some people run and do it, and then somebody else does this, and people run and do it, and somebody else, you know what I mean? And it's like if we said, look, what we are really looking for is this type of changes in teacher behavior, be looking for these things, provide regular feedback to teachers on these things, have conversations about these changes that you want, that we all want to see. Then teachers who are making those changes start to get support for it. It's an expectation, because I think teachers run this way and there is no real, after they finish the PD, something else comes along and they're like, oh, okay, that's no longer expected. I'm not going to put my, and I'm not saying teachers are totally driven by expectations. I'm not saying that, but you can only take on so many new things at a time. So you're like, okay, this is it. Now it's this. Now it's this. And you never get a chance to get good at something before we switch directions.
And so
did I don't know. if
yeah,
I-
no, that totally makes sense to me, and it almost feels like we should not, in our work towards adult badges, we should not necessarily encourage people to hopscotch around across all of the competencies that we are trying to support, but rather going very deep and providing robust support for a particular competency. I mean, I'm thinking about cultures of thinking again, like you can go extremely deep with implementing that in the classroom and probably not get all of it within the course of a single calendar year. And so how is it that we can provide that opportunity to level up in that particular area rather than sort of doing that hopscotch approach? Does that capture a little bit of what you're thinking?
It's good. It was not necessarily, I think, what I was thinking, because I'm not sure it's the teachers hopscotching as much as our system.
Okay,
Right.
fair enough.
Yeah. And I'm thinking it's almost a 360. Maybe I'm thinking of Kevin's statement about the 360. You know, it was actually a piece that Lori brought to our last teaching and learning meeting. But they talk about like student results or data. Then they say, okay, from their standards-based PD, right? Then it's changes in teachers' skills, knowledge, or dispositions, depending on the focus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you look for changes in teachers' practice. Then it goes back to data again. It's like, what was the results? So, I mean,
Mhm.
really what we're looking at right here, to me, are these last two circles, right? And it's like, how do we know that what we taught them in the PD resulted in a change in their practice? And then how do we know that that led to a change in the data? And if there was no change in the teacher's practice and the data went up, then something else caused the data to change, right? I mean, I don't know. It seems like you've got to have these two things together if you're going to start to connect between the results of PD and the.
I think that's essential.
So I don't know.
That's
if
a
there's
very good visual and
something
sort of-
here, and it's like it's almost like when Kevin said the 360. It's like we almost have to see this, and then this with it.
It's almost like SLOs though.
Like what?
Like an
SLO.
Like an
Oh.
SLO. Like this is what I'm going to focus on. This.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my data.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do this practice of whatever. Read a book. Do a PD. Reflect. How are my students doing now based on that?
Yeah,
on
it's
data.
totally like that. It's
Mhm.
totally like that.
Well, and I keep on coming back to what you were saying around how do we take what teachers are already doing and apply that to the work of capturing evidence and sort of supporting. I've already kept you guys a couple of minutes after. I'm sorry about that. Where I would like to go is to sort of further refine a little bit on, okay, because we had such high level, like student work and projects sort of means almost nothing without like, well, what would we expect there, right? And so I think there is a really robust set of evidence that I think we could actually format into something where people would say, yeah, that is the evidence that I would expect from a teacher, or that as a teacher I would be willing to provide. And I think we would be able to actually maybe talk to some teachers and see if they would.
That's what I was gonna suggest. Like, do we want to take this to a staff lounge during lunch one day and just be like, hey,
Yeah, like if this
can we
were
get
the
feedback
evidence.
on this? Like, are we anywhere near where we need to be?
So I would think that that would be where we would want to go for the evidence for badges. We are going to sort of continue down the badge canvas. If you have ever seen the badge canvas, it is each one of these concepts, right? Evidence, audience, value proposition. We are going to continue to iterate and sort of build out each one of these as we go, so that we have a fully realized badge canvas for our adult badges, and that we have tested each component with our key stakeholders. I'm going to ask, does anyone have a specific preference of where we go next based upon really digging into who our audience is, what the value proposition is for earners, for the school district, how we look at endorsers, or continue to keep on developing with our evidence?
I'm wondering, like, with the work that we're doing around professional development, like
Yep.
what we're doing today and stuff, like, is any one of those areas in there kind of like complementary to that? So
It's a
that
really good question.
we might be able to.
Well, and actually,
We're
if
really thinking one way, and we're kind of talking through this, trying to figure it out, and then maybe there's an area in here that like ties into that. And
I think it's probably value proposition. If we're looking at what we talked about, and I apologize for the three of you who were not in the previous conversation because you don't have the context, but we were essentially talking about sort of the three circles of district, school, and individual, and what is the thing in the middle of those that actually fits the needs for professional learning. And so if we can actually establish the value proposition for the district, for the individual, and for the school, that then there is actually a strong approach for the crossover for those three Venn diagrams. So that might not sound like anything yet, but I am making a connection to what we just talked about in the other meeting, and I think that's probably right, where we get to sort of dive in a little bit deeper. Again, thank you all for being amazing collaborators. Really appreciate your time and attention today.
Thanks for doing the visual Venn diagram. That was cool.
Yeah, if you have not done that as a process, it is definitely one of my favorites.